Hey Ryan, welcome to the Profit and Grit Show. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Hey, I'd love to start out just learning a little bit about you. I'd love to learn what do you do professionally to start with?
So I am the founder of ShareWillow. So we help companies in the trades create and manage incentive plans for their technicians. So think of HVAC, plumbing, electrical company. Most of them all agree that you need to pay technicians hourly, or you need to pay them with incentives and not just hourly. And we help them design and manage those plans, fully integrated with Service Titan, House Call Pro, and other systems.
Yeah, I love this topic. Before I ask you my next question, I just want a little thing here. My clients are home service companies, so I get a
Mhm.
lot of clients in this space, and it's actually not as common as you would think it would be in terms of pay for performance. There definitely are 70, 60% of clients that come in, they have some plan set up, but many don't.
Yeah.
And what I find is the ones that don't, they're usually oftentimes are efficiency issues in terms of labor and production and things like that. So I'm excited to get deeper in that. Now, part two of my question is just learning about you. What's a little personal tidbit that you can share with us about you?
So I used to love, or I really like pickleball. So that's a tidbit. And then I just love startups in general. I'm an angel investor in probably almost 40 companies. And I just love the game. I love the game so much, and it's so fun. So now, as a founder, I'm also sort of like an investor on a lot of cap tables of other founders. So I get to have an inside peek at how they run their business, how they run their monthly investor update email, when they send it, metrics they're tracking. So kind of gives me a little bit of an advantage in just seeing what some of these top companies are doing and how they're running.
That's super cool. Also a pickleball fan. I actually was at a tournament this weekend. I live in San Jose, Northern California, and I went to Roseville. It was a lot of
What's your
fun.
duper? What's your duper?
So I'm about a 3.6, maybe I've been as high as 3.75. I've dropped a little bit. How about you?
Like a real duper, I'm probably around there too. I think I thought that I used to hover at a 4.0, and then I would go to like a real like actual pickleball club and play 4.0s, and I'm like, whoa, I need to get off the court. So I probably like 3.7, 3.7,
Yeah,
like
yes.
a real true 3.7.
What I learned this weekend is we played in a 4.0, and I'm definitely not a 4.0. But if it's older dudes, I'm pretty close to a 4.0 is what I realized today.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, yeah, it's crazy. Like so, some of these, like in New York, like I'll go to this, one club, even Lifetime, and it's like the 4.0s at Lifetime playing indoor with like no weather variability. It's like those dudes are nasty, like just
Yeah.
so good. All college like tennis players that have crossed over, just super good.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, I want to start out with your personal story because I think it's one of the most powerful leadership lessons I've heard and even learned from you. You've been really open about having an addiction issue and it crept in while you had a company you were scaling a company called Phone Wagon. And
Mhm.
I want to just kind of talk through that. Take me through that story. I mean, what got you to that point of where, you went to a recovery center and then you're also dealing with a business that sounds like it's growing and scaling to the point that you're selling it.
Yeah. So I actually look at it now as a superpower. As long as I can control the superpower and sort of like focus it on the right things, I think it truly is a superpower. And I think back then, I think there was like a few things that I was dealing with that or I think that I was facing that I had never dealt with. I think firstly, I had never gone to therapy, right? So I think I was like confused, and I don't have a great relationship with my mom. And maybe there was like stuff with that had sort of just never been addressed. And I think when you don't have answers and you don't have like external sort of people to help you get to those answers, you start to just like kind of come up with theories in your head and you're not really talking it out with a lot of people, right? And a lot of this stuff I was keeping super close to the chest. So I think when that happens, you prohibit yourself from connecting with people. And a lot of this that I'm about to say, I like learned in sort of treatment and through therapy. But I think when you don't connect with people, you don't release a lot of the chemicals that happen through like natural connection. And then when you don't connect with people and you're not getting those chemicals, you seek those chemicals elsewhere. These externally, you sort of need them from a third party, if you will, to provide that. And that's why they say, people, if you ask someone that does I don't even want to say the word, like heroin for the first time. What does it feel like? Oh, it feels like I'm getting a big hug, a giant hug, because it's releasing not dopamine with that, but that's releasing, oxytocin and these like sort of love drug chemicals and stuff that most people get through having deep connection. So I think firstly, potentially I wasn't connecting with people for one reason or another, right? And so then I was keeping sort of everyone at a distance. And even at my startup, I think like I wasn't really letting people in, and I wasn't, vulnerable. And I was kind of have this like maybe front, like, oh, like I got this. That leads to imposter syndrome and all this stuff. And I think from there, look, I think it kind of just went down and I think a lot of people go, not a lot, but it's not super unique to myself, but I
Sure.
definitely was on the Adderall train for a while. So much so it's like Adderall, and then you got to come down with something, and you go back up, and then it's like you're just not healthy. And this is like pre-COVID. Really kind of dialed up really in like 2018, 2019, really 2019 dialed up, and then like COVID was like, then you're like even more isolated during COVID, and all of that. And I was like, look, it's either I'm either gonna lose everything with Phone Wagon, or there's like another scenario where like I'm gonna like really lose everything and potentially including my life.
Yeah.
Or I have to like fix this problem that had never been addressed. So I was like, look, I'm just going to go to this treatment place. I went to this place called Caron, Caron, in Delray Beach, Florida. Caron Ocean Drive is what it's called. And it was incredible. And it was pretty much like therapy boot camp. And so when I was going there, I basically messaged my team, and our team was probably like 8 or 9 people. And there was also there was a few other things, by the way, that were happening. Like we were competing in like a pretty competitive space, like call tracking, call analytics, right? We were built on top of Twilio. So it was very like commoditized. We were head to head with this company called CallRail, which we could talk more about that. We were in a litigation with CallRail, so like that stinks to be in litigation with anyone.
Heck yeah.
Um, and it was like a multi-year litigation um, over alleged copyright infringement on like a few lines of JavaScript. So like it's like so it's like that then is preventing me from like raising, and so like then we're not growing super fast. We're in this commoditized space. I'm like potentially dealing with like all this like internal stuff that I'd never dealt with before. Particularly like just like I'm not connecting with people, right? I'm like whatever. Regardless, it's kind of all these things were happening. So I was like, oh my God, like I'm potentially in over my head. So then, and I have a team, and we like have a company, and we had raised some venture. So anyway, ended up going to treatment at the end of 2020. It was freaking fantastic. Got so many answers. I was like, oh my God. And then I started to like learn to like really love myself and also be like more confident in myself. And then like also have like forgiveness for like my parents and stuff like that, versus like being like, you did this. It was, you know what I mean? Like I was able to like see
Yeah.
them in a
Yeah.
different light, not them, but see one of them in a different light. And kind of that brought a lot of like, it lifted a lot of, I think, weight that I like potentially had that I was dealing with. Um, and the crazy interesting thing is, so then and this is where I really believe that the universe, like I am favored by the universe, if that even like makes sense. Like I get lucky. So like that happened. And then it's like, I start getting like, 30 days, 60 days of sobriety. Everything starts to become like super clear. You know what I mean? When you start like sleeping well and you're eating and you're like just super, super like sober, then you start to be like, oh, like I'm like it, like, then I start to get my real confidence back, and I'm like, oh, like, this is it. This is like the real Ryan, and I'm like super capable and all of this stuff. Then CallRail, who we were like, head to head with in litigation with, they're like, we want to talk about an acquisition. And like, look, and then so I'm like beat up and look, maybe this was their strategy, and honestly, it worked for them. And it worked for me too. I think everything was great. I think it was a win-win, and I like their team a lot, actually.
Uh,
But they were like basically like, we want to talk about acquisition, and we had been in litigation, we had gone through deposition, like we were deep. I'm like in this recovery house, or like I'd gone through. I guess I was so basically I went through 2 months of like inpatient like recovery, and then you go to like a house to live, like a sober living place.
sure.
So it was like towards the end of that, they asked about that. They actually pinged one of my investors and he asked me, he's like, oh, you probably don't want to do this. And I was like, no, 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 no. I want to have that conversation for sure. So we ended up like talking and it was basically like they would acquire, like figured out, negotiations and all that. They would acquire us. We would settle this lawsuit. Kind of everything happened at once. And then it ended up happening and closing in May of 2021. So, that was like a long-winded or I guess it was maybe a long-winded answer to that, but that's kind of like what happened and then sort of
No,
like also what transpired.
a lot of good stuff there. I mean, kudos to you for recognizing you had a problem and making a tough decision of treatment. I mean, a lot of people just go through life and they never do the treatment, or they stumble through the treatment and then they go back, and it just is a vicious cycle. So kudos to you. What
The
I want to
treat, by
know,
the way, oh,
sorry,
sorry, real quick. By the way,
yeah,
if your
please.
treatment's awesome, like I would like live at treatment. Treatment's sweet. You just like do a lot of therapy. They cook for you. Like there's really, I mean, the one I went to, I loved it. Super interesting people. Everyone has awesome stories. Like there was like really interesting people as part of my like cohort. We've done like business together now because like the one I went to was like it was like nicer, right?
Sure.
So like everyone was like coming from like really interesting like stories, backgrounds, in hands in interesting stuff. So I thought it was awesome.
Wow.
Great place to network too. If you want to raise capital, like just go to fancy rehab.
So I wouldn't suggest having an addiction problem to go there,
Right.
but
I didn't say that. Yeah.
if you could slip in there somewhere, it might be worth it. Especially if it sounds like a together one. I guess I'll use that word in parentheses. But going back to really where I want to take this is, how do you run a company and even sell a company through some, you're obviously independent from the company at that point. If you're taking therapy or following the program, you're probably not readily available all day long. How did you get to that point that the company's still running and able to even get to the point of sale?
Yeah. So, by the time I went, the company was 3 years old. So I had a CTO that was like senior, and honestly, I think any company that gets to be 3 years old, you should have a team in place, right? So like it was relatively not incredibly dependent on myself. Like we had AEs, we had customer success people, sort of inbound lead engine was kind of going. So like it was able to, and by the way, like treatment is like 60 days usually, right? I think like
Okay.
a typical, I mean, some people go for a crazy long time, but I think like on average, it's like a 56-day program, right? 228s, 28, 28. So it's like not that long. The one I went to, we had computers and phones and stuff. So like I was like available. So it wasn't like I was offline. So it was, and by the way, you have downtime. So it honestly wasn't hard. I was probably more focused then because I'm, doing all this self work. Then I get like kind of downtime in this safe space with other people around with like house staff. You know what I mean? It was probably like I was probably more productive. And then I'd go outside by the pool and I'd sit and be on my laptop. Like it was like, I was actually like probably way more focused there than like in a COVID house. You know what I mean? Than, like by myself.
Yeah. But I mean, kudos to you. You must have put a pretty strong team around you to be able to hold the company together without
Yeah.
you having a constant presence and you being in this. You're really spinning it as a positive, which is cool. It sounds
Yeah.
like you got a lot of mental clarity while you were there. But I still have to say kudos to you, because there's a lot of businesses 3 years in that literally, if they, lost the founder for a little period of time each day, it would start to unravel.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The team, and also I think it was a surprise to the team, right? Because it's not like I'm doing this stuff and like sharing it with them. Yeah, last night was, I had another one, another night no sleep. It's like it's not like I'm sharing that. So I think it was like one, they had to like trust that, okay, this is in your best, trust me a little bit. Like, yes, 100%. It's all the team.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears talking about this whole anti-equity type thought process. A lot of times in small businesses, and I know this is common in Silicon Valley, but even in small businesses, a lot of times when we have key players, we'll think, okay, well, we'll give them a little piece of ownership, and that'll keep them with us and staying with us and thinking of the same mission that I have as an owner of the business. You kind of have a different philosophy. Talk to me about this whole anti-equity concept and what's your philosophy on that?
I do want to clarify. I'm not
Sure.
anti-equity. I just think so. And here's the thing. I think for your key people, your top senior people who are going to be with you, and they're like your senior people at your HVAC and your plumbing. You guys are building a big 50, $100 million business. For sure, have them have equity equity in the business. Those are senior hires, right? And I think long term and all of that. What I'm saying is by from talking, personally talking to call it high hundreds, not sure a thousand, high hundreds of individual employees,
Sure.
technician level, the idea that I'm going to get 0.5% in stock options and at the 409A price, and I'll have to then exercise it if I leave or if I get it granted to me. Now there's a taxable event. But if the company gets acquired in 3 to 5 years, I'll get the delta between my granted price and the share price, even though those companies are more linear and not exponential. Like, do you think that moves the needle on a day-to-day basis of the HVAC guy installing the air conditioner?
No.
Like
Yeah.
anyone who's preaching like phantom equity and this as motivating on a day-to-day basis for technician level, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind and you haven't talked to the customers. You're out of your mind. Of course, for senior people at your company, like let's all be aligned and let's grow bottom line because look, all these businesses trade on a cash flow multiple. Guess what? My guy doing repairs and installs and stuff, he can't affect bottom line, right? Because he doesn't know what you're throwing through the business. He can't affect how much you're buying the trucks for, how much you're putting, rent for. It's like he almost can't impact bottom line like that. And
Right.
bottom line multiples are what these all trade on. I'm not anti-equity. I think
Hmm.
equity is awesome. I've made my only money that I personally have ever made has been from equity. Like I don't really make money from salaries at companies. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So like I'm not anti-equity. I just think that in the trades, if you want to motivate and incentivize on a day-to-day basis to do the certain actions that you need that move the needle for your business, collectively, it's cash. It's cash for the techs. And when I'm at trade shows or I'm talking to guys, even on the streets, I do tons of street interviews. What do you think they say if I'm like, what do you want every month? Do you want like, this piece of paper that says you have this, but you have to be at the company in maybe 5, 10 years when it sells that you can't really not do anything with right now? Or do you want cash every single month that you could take and buy more groceries, maybe buy a trip, maybe buy cleats for your kids? Like, which one do you think they're saying?
Oh, cash. Well, two things that I've known from running my own small business, money number one, and then time is number two. So those are the two
Yeah.
things usually most people on the front lines want.
Exactly. So that's my perspective there. And again, it's from talking to customers. If they're like, no, this moves the needle, I would have a different perspective. But I develop conviction through customer interviews and talking to customers.
Yeah, that's good stuff. In fact, Ryan, one of the just to reinforce your point, we used to have a commission plan. Paid my top guy made like $600,000 or $700,000 a year, so a very lucrative commission plan. But the thing that caused the most incentive was $100 cash bonus that people would get weekly if they hit certain thresholds, and we do them in the meeting, and they'd either get 100 or 200. So typically, it was literally cash. Like we'd put it in our payroll and record it correctly, but I'd literally go out and get like $2,000 cash every 2 weeks, and I would be handing out $100 bills. And it was one of the biggest motivators, even more than sometimes closing a deal, as sad as that
Mhm.
sounds, just because people love the idea of that one, the getting in front of their teammates cash, but two, just having, $500 to $600 cash that they got from some, deal they closed or something.
That reminds me at my first company, M Help Desk, we after you close the deal, so there the sales floor was bigger. We probably had like maybe like 15 people kind of at one point, right? So you'd get to walk up to the gong. So just even the walk up. So it was like, oh shit, like you made a sale, right? Then you hit the gong, everyone cheers, and then we had the wheel. So even just the walk up and gong, you get to ring the gong in front of everyone to get the clap, and then you do the wheel, and then you get the prize. So it's like the recognition, I think, is something that people care about. They care a lot about it.
Yeah, it's huge. So let's talk about this pay for performance type system. Like, what do you guys advocate, ShareWillow? What does that look like? And let's keep it in the context, of course, of home services and HVAC in particular. I think is a great topic.
Yeah.
How do you set it up? What does that look like?
So, okay, so when I say performance pay, What I actually mean is hourly plus incentive. I think I launched a bunch of ads recently and I say performance pay in the ads. And I think firstly, there's a lot of engagement in the comments, so that's great for ads. But it's not the best engagement, I'll have to say. Uh, and I think, when I'm saying performance pay, I think a lot of people interpret that as pure performance. I know there's some companies, I believe Tommy Mello's from A1 Garage Door Service, I believe they're pure performance pay, right? They
Ah,
don't get any hourly. Most of our customers and the way that we build our plans, mostly some of our customers do pure performance, pure kind of the variable pay, right? Most of our customers do hourly plus bonus, which is like what we're calling, incentive pay.
sure.
Right. And so that's what we advocate for. So I'll give you an example. So we're working with Jim Black Hawk, HAAK, Black Hawk Heating and Air from Appleton, Wisconsin, 100 technicians, right? So they'll have a bunch of different plans. Let's just talk about like an installer plan. Yeah, an installer plan, right? So the installers might have a plan. So they might get a base, and I might be butchering this. Let's just call it 25 an hour, 30 an
Sure.
hour. Let's call it 25, right? So they'll get 25 an hour. And then they get their incentive based on, call it average ticket size. Did you sell a maintenance contract or a membership? Did you get a 5-star review? Number of hours it took to complete the job, and maybe like one or two other metrics. And if you get sort of like max on all of those, you could get an extra, call it 2K, which divided by number of hours, that could be an extra $10 an hour. So your effective hourly rate will go from 25 to 35, right? You're a $35 an hour person, technician versus a 25 when you kind of factor in everything. But that's typically how we build the plans. And again, for the business, we want to say, hey, you're only going to pay that extra $10 an hour, that extra 2K, if you get, your average ticket size. Oh, and callbacks. Oh my God. Right. If you reduce your callbacks. So that guy, maybe some of these guys were running 10, 12% callback rate. And I'll just give you an example of this. And sorry to go on a rant, but
No, this is great stuff.
let's say I do 40 jobs a month, 40 gross jobs, 40 total jobs, which on a 20-day month, that's 2 per day. But 10 of those jobs are callbacks. I had to go back to the job, right? So I'm actually only doing 30 net new jobs, right? So 30 net new times 1,000 average ticket size is 30K. If I can reduce my callbacks and I'm only doing 5 callbacks, I'm doing 5 extra net new jobs per month per technician. 5 net new jobs, even at the same average ticket times 1,000. That's an extra 5K per technician per month. That's 60K per year. But guess what? You're probably going to attach maintenance plans higher because now you have 5 additional chances to attach a maintenance plan. So let's say we sell one more maintenance plan or a membership, right?
Sure.
And we're probably going to move average ticket size from 1,000 to 1,200. How do we do that? Well, if it's installation, it's going to be a lot higher. But let's say there's a service.
Sure.
Guess what? If you just use the templates like in Service Titan, showing a good, better, best, we know that if we just use the Service Titan estimate templates, the average ticket size increases. What happens is a lot of these guys will just default to like, oh, here's the cheapest plan or one. So it's like you're going to now have more net new jobs because callbacks is down. Your average ticket size is going to go up because you're going to use templates, whatever it is, right? And then you're going to sell more memberships. You're going to get more 5-star reviews, which then reinforces more jobs. So it's like just by doing this, it's not unreasonable to add 10K per month per technician in revenue, which is over 100K per year per technician, right? It's like so doable, right? You have to incentivize. Or Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. It's completely tied to it. So that's what we're doing.
Is there some modeling that you're doing on a per client basis where, because I know a lot of clients might say, well, man, if I pay an extra $10 an hour, I'm just not going to I'm not sure I'm going to make that back. Like, do you kind of model that out like you just said it all verbally, or do you get that pushback, and how do you deal with it if you do?
We model everything out. So we kind of know now that we have almost 300 home service companies.
Sure.
And each company could have a few plans. So we have thousands of plans, and we know which ones are working, which ones aren't. But we'll create the sort of incentives. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention is there can be a threshold that needs to get hit in order for anything to pay out. So that kind of de-risks the business from that. But the other thing that we do is we run historicals and then even projections through it and say, hey, here's what you would pay out. Then we also take a look at the labor rate for that job type. And we say like, all right, we're trying to sort of back solve and not ever have a labor rate higher than, call it maybe 18% with incentive and base, right? So here's our hourly plus incentives is this all in right here. Does that labor rate make sense? I think it won't make sense to what you're saying is like, well, if I'm paying an extra and that makes my labor rate 50, 60%, like that's what kills it. But it's like, no. Everything else is actually increasing. The labor rate is correlated to that. It's never going to jump that, right? So
Yep.
those are the important things that we're doing and thinking about all day, every day. And that's why I say, we're an inch wide and a mile deep. We're thinking of all these different scenarios for all these different types of plans for a few different types of businesses. And that's where we are able to like actually nail it.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of the callbacks, trying to reduce them. But one of the pushbacks I'll hear on pay performance, we'll call it, in the case where there's an hourly rate, and then we're giving them a piece of based on performance of quality issues. Like people get worried that they'll just try to bang through jobs or the quality might suffer because,
Yeah.
the more they get done. Give me some examples how that can get minimized in this type of model.
Well, firstly, I think if you minimize callbacks, if they just try to bang, this is the thing with hourly. Firstly, it's funny. Hourly, either you drag your feet, right, and you just try to because your
Right.
incentive, you get your money off the hour, so you don't care, or you just try to bang out, close all your tickets for the day, whatever it is. And if you have to go back or someone else has to go back, it doesn't really matter. Whatever. I did my assignment for the day. So I think to kind of offset the potential in incentive pay is to include callbacks. And by the way, callbacks is such a massive metric. Every one of our customers uses it. I wrote a newsletter, blog post. Callbacks is the silent killer in home services, all of that. Everyone will 100% agree. So one, callbacks, like if you do a bad job, you have to go back. I also think like customer satisfaction. So whether I think there should be two factors because like the customer leaving a review, sure. A lot of people are paying on that. And even some are paying if there's a picture with the review. So I think the review, like the customers have to be happy. If the customers feel like they just got sold something, look, I hear a lot of feedback in the counter to why you shouldn't do incentive pay. It's like, oh, then everyone's just salesmen. Customers are going to get sold stuff they
Right.
don't need. Super valid, super fair. Hear that loud and clear. And that's why we aren't commission. Like this is not, I'm not trying to put together a pure commission program, right? I think that there's ways to offset that. If like the customer feels like they got ripped or you were kind of coming at them hard to buy this thing that like maybe is a nice to have and they didn't want it, you're going to hear that in this other portion of the incentive pay, right? That should offset that. And that should ultimately disincentivize them from pushing something that the customer doesn't need. So I think that there's ways to sort of counteract that and put together this really nice incentive plan that has KPIs that sure, some of them are going to be, and that's the thing. Look, I think just asking, I actually worked for a company for 1 year called Assurian, and they do, so they're the cell phone insurance, right? And they also do like extended warranties on products. And what they found is that the commission salespeople and the, hey, buy an extended warranty, made the experience horrible. Like Best Buy, I think originally had commission salespeople. Anyway, they stopped it and they realized if you just ask the question, it will automatically attach at 20%. You don't need the commission people to like be pushing it. You actually don't even get that big of an uptick and it kills the customer experience. And I think similarly here, it's like, do you want to buy a membership? So we'll come out twice a year, we'll clean it. That could prevent more of these $1,000 like repair calls. Sure, I'll buy a peace of mind, $300 for the year. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's things that you can do that will, make it so it's not a bad experience for the customer. Like by just saying like, do you want, some people want the better quality system. Like I did a podcast interview with this lady, Lacey Coleman. She owns a $9 million revenue HVAC company. And she was telling me, she's like, look, the really high end systems, she's like, if you're outside and you're having a barbecue and you're around it, it's going to be soft, right? Versus like, sometimes you're outside, you're by the AC, it's like, you like can't really hear, it like interrupts. And by the way, I told her, I was like, wow, the way that you like created a story out of that and made me put myself like having like a, lemonade and iced tea in my backyard with my family. And it's like this quiet AC unit over there. I thought that was amazing. But like some people will pay up for that, if it's like an extra couple grand, it's like they'll do that all day. And especially certain types of customers will do that all day. So I think it's really like, if you incentivize on it and you then have training kind of on top of that and say like, hey, just present the options and maybe story tell and, let them decide. But it's like really just giving the customers a choice.
Yeah. Are you finding, let's say HVAC in particular, is there kind of a formula to this, if you will? Like, does everybody kind of have, are you finding everybody's going to kind of have a similar type plan, or does each company have their own nuances that make it somewhat unique to each company?
In general, most have similar type plans. I think though it gets nuanced. It does get a little nuanced. I think it gets nuanced into like the roles and of the business, right? Like some might have, a crew or a helper that sort of floats. So then it's like I have to then be able to allocate certain hours per job for this pro rata based on number of hours worked, right? If you have a helper that floats around. Some people have salesmen that will go and sort of present and sell, but not perform. Then some people, then some will have sell and perform only, right? So it's really just creating the rules for their particular business on how they're running their business. And then, like, how do you grab the data from Service Titan? The other element of all of this is that this all has to be coming in from a field service software product seamlessly. Like, we didn't have integrations like 6 months ago. And like, it's like, you have to have the integrations. You know what I mean? Like you have to show the employees almost in real time where they're at, tie that reward to the behavior, reinforce it, all of that, right? You can't expect people to do manual data entry. So I think like so 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 it's like they're generally the same except the dynamics of the business and roles that they have. And some have installers and service people, and then some would be just the maintenance people, and then they'll have like a helper that's kind of in training, but then they'll float between vans or trucks. And then it's like, then how do you grab the data out of Service Titan to kind of map it? Because that's the last final key, not just the integration, but mapping the data into the incentive plan.
Does that get a little bit messy though, in terms of, because garbage in, garbage out type thing? Do you have a challenge in, by the time it's getting to, it maps back through you, that sometimes data isn't getting entered correctly, or that can be a challenge in getting the computations?
So we used to, and we actually had to build like a separate piece of software that we call an integration hub. So instead of just going Service Titan, flow it in Service Titan, there's like actually all these different reports. There could be, revenue by month, but then there could be attributable revenue if you want to attribute, if there's multiple people in it, but you want to attribute it. There could be adjusted revenue. And then there's a bunch of different reports by different categories. So at first we were like, oh my God, this is crazy. So we actually built like an integration hub. So we'll feed the data into there. Then we actually kind of like normalize and even do calculations on it over here. And then we push it and map it in. So we've realized we needed this like middle layer in order to uh, basically like kind of take all this data that we're getting from all these different reports within Service Titan and different endpoints, clean it up, and then map it back so that it's like it's super clean, and like the end customer just sees like this beautiful like line item, but it's like they don't understand like that's coming in from like a bunch of different places, and there's like different sort of calculations on top of it.
Yeah. And one thing I want to circle back to that you mentioned, having somewhat current data, what it may not be real time, but close to it, is so integral to the incentive plan being important. Because if you're giving some, I remember I used to interview people that were incentive based, and I'd ask them what their comp plan was, and they say, "Oh, I don't really know. I don't know. It's really complicated. And I don't know how they calculate it. I just get it once a month." That kind of like defeats the purpose of the whole plan. Like if people
Completely.
aren't, getting some excitement over what they're earning.
Completely. That was also the big unlock for us is when we realized like we're actually building and trying to serve the employee. When we realized, if we can impact the employee, right? If they know how they're getting, where the incentives are, what's their progress, how much they're getting, that's where the behavior changes. That's when the end customer gets a better experience, the employee understands everything, and then the business, it's ultimately better for the business. So once we changed and we realized like the visibility component of this is incredibly important, and we need the employee to be able to easily understand, right? Like we have a bunch of customers and they're using, like configurable payroll in Service Titan or something, right? And it's fine. It's like it's more on commission basis, but you can configure and do some kind of commissions for some stuff and price book and all of that. But like there's no employee experience, right? And I was talking to a bunch of companies. They're like, yeah, we basically do all these calculations and they get it on their paycheck. They don't really know how or why or where it came from. And it's like, that doesn't impact the behavior at all. Some of them they don't really know all the calculations, especially when there's like tiers and levels and like, I get this for this. And if there's too many things, it, basically it's like as if you had nothing. So yes, I think the visibility component is incredibly important. so that they can truly understand, where that carrot is and what they need to do in order to get it.
Yeah. What you've mentioned you mentioned that there might be multiple type incentives per one company. How many, using HVAC as an example, how many different types of incentive plans are there for one company typically?
At least four. So like typically
Okay.
like your installers will have, and you got to think because the installer's average ticket size will be different and it's just like a different type of job
Right.
versus the service. So it'd be like installer service, maybe maintenance, but maintenance might be into service and you mark that as like a $0 job and whatever. So let's just say installer service, then typically a service manager who usually gets actually comped on uh, all of the jobs within their like direct reports or within their service department. And usually they're responsible for a margin number. So there's like a margin threshold. And then their number might be like, you need to, grow top line, but also grow margin at, or margin also has to be at least at call it 18%, 20%. And then if that happens, then you'll get, a potential max bonus of call it 5% of the margin. So if the margin is 20K, 5%, cool. You might get, up to a thousand. Those numbers aren't big enough, but you know what I mean?
I
200K,
get it. Yeah.
10,000. And then sort of then their rules from there. And then the final one is CSRs. So it's like CSRs, service managers, installs, and service are like kind of the four buckets at least. Some of them will have more. And CSRs is typically like a booking rate. And then there's some other metrics like did you assign it to the right person? Like was there, I forget some of the other CSRs. Main thing for CSRs is booking rate.
Okay. And then I'm trying to get my head around this. So you've got these various plans. Everybody's getting a little bit of piece of the action, is what I'll call it. Is your software rolling up all these numbers in terms of like, hey, if you make one install sale at this level of threshold and these metrics are made, this is what you're going to pay, and that's what your labor relative to your sales going to look like. Is that what your software is doing to that level of degree, combining all of them or all the different scenarios?
Um, I think in theory, and I think most of the time, yes. I think there's
Okay.
sometimes that we don't get that level of data. That's like what we're working towards though.
Okay.
I think like again, some of that depends on, what we're pulling in from Service Titan. I think sometimes a lot of their like maybe job costing and stuff might live outside of it. I think short answer is like yes, that is what we're kind of showing them. Hey, if you do this job and all of these things that you want to happen, if they're the max payout for this would be this, but your callbacks are lower, all of these other great things are happening. So yeah, I mean, there's a case study actually on the Service Titan blog. Darius Livers, he's kind of like a legend in home services. He was COO of FH Fur, and he was nervous. He switched his HVAC service over from hourly to performance pay, and he says on the blog, we doubled revenue in the first year. Like there was so much money just sitting on the sidelines. They doubled the revenue and without increasing technicians. Like that's crazy
That
just
is
by
crazy.
flipping from hourly to performance pay.
Yeah. A lot of times the pushback I'll get on any type of changes is, man, we're just so overwhelmed. We got so much going on, and now I've got to try to figure out how to explain this to my team. Yeah, I want to make more revenue, but we're already having, operational bottlenecks or whatever. Do you ever get that type of pushback? And what would be your feedback if you did?
So, look, I think everything we're doing is inbound. I think customers are coming to us and not inbound like they're wanting to buy ShareWillow. Some of them are just downloading a free template off our site
Sure.
or looking at our bonus calculator. But it's all inbound leads for us that then we're trying to like say, hey, you should use ShareWillow. Um, so that I feel like most people get it. I think there is some hesitation around how will this be received, and we are helping that. We actually provide training documentation, talking points, things like that. We actually join a lot of the employee rollout meetings for like the go lives, and we'll help message this. And it's like, look, your owner is like partnering with best in class company ShareWillow, who only does this and has visibility into all these other companies that are doing this, and all their technicians are making more money per hour, right? I think most of the times these employees, these technicians, they want the upside. They want the ability to be competitive. It's fun. It's like, they kind of chirp each other. And like, I just think, they almost want to be in a system that allows them to thrive and have that upside.
What's your data saying so far in terms of when someone adopts this type of incentive pay? what they could expect in terms of results? I mean, doubling obviously is awesome, but that's probably not the norm. What would you probably say to a company you could expect to see?
I like to pad it. 10K, an extra 10K per month per technician in revenue. So on a percentage basis, it kind of depends on what they're normally bringing in, right?
Sure.
10K per month per technician after, call it 6 months, right? It has to, you got to give it time for the behavior to change, for it to roll out, for the numbers to really roll in. But after 6 months, you can expect 10K per technician per month in incremental revenue, right? And so you're paying for that extra 10K, probably 1K per month, or yeah, 10K per month. Yeah, like maybe 1K per month
Okay.
in incentive pay.
Yeah. So you're easily talking 10K, 10 technician shop. You're talking $1 million a year.
100%.
Wow.
100%.
Wow. Wow. That's good stuff. Okay, good stuff. Hey, just in terms of where I would like to wrap up on this, I'd love to know, is there some type of mantra or guiding principle that kind of keeps you grounded as an entrepreneur?
I love saying action creates opportunity. I don't know if that keeps me grounded, but I just think, so many people fall into analysis paralysis when they're like looking at a new idea. And it's like, just do something. And when you start to do something, you uncover, someone might, oh, you should talk to this person. Oh, they see you doing something, or you go into this conversation maybe at this one angle, you learn something. Just do stuff. When you do stuff, opportunity presents itself, and it also increases your luck surface area. So I think action creates opportunity is something I really live by. Like, I'm not afraid to go big, swing big, and just go for it. Because like I just know that like other things are going to happen, when I'm creating that action.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a powerful one. So your website, sharewillow.com, sharewillow.com. I'll include your LinkedIn and then the Instagram links in my show notes at profitandgrit.com. If people wanted to reach out to you, is LinkedIn the spot to go, or is there anywhere else you'd like them to go?
Email me, Ryan@sharewillow.com. Go to the website, download a free Excel template, go to our bonus calculator for free, try ShareWillow. I would just end this in saying, like, look, if you're on Service Titan, House Call Pro, Jobber, specifically Service Titan, though, we have a beautiful integration with them. And, if you want to increase revenue without increasing the number of technicians, potentially, if you have 10 technicians, an extra $1 million a year, like, this is going to work. This is not something that, we're thinking might potentially work. It's working for all the big guys. The FH Furs are doing performance pay. Tommy Mello's doing performance pay. All the big guys are doing this, and we've now created a platform and system to basically allow any company that's in-home services, that's on ServiceTitan and those other platforms, to roll this out, get your technicians more money, and ultimately get your customers a better experience, because they're going to get taken care of by the technician that's now aligned with the company goals.
Yeah, that's great. And I will advocate to go to your website, because I went there and that's how I got connected to you ultimately. You guys have a lot of really cool tools. I mean, you obviously are following that give away good stuff, people get hooked, and then they'll want to know more about us, because you do give some really good tools.
Amazing. Yeah. And we do a weekly newsletter that's custom written every single week. And we'll have like either an offer on it, but then it's like just something we're hearing or from one of my podcast episodes. So yeah, we try to just give value, and then say, like, look, we know that we're giving away so much value that we think it's going to come back.
One last question. Sorry, I said I was going to wrap up, but you brought something up that made me think of it. Is there a way for people to dip their toes in this? Let's say they say, oh man, I don't know if I'm ready to roll it out everywhere. Can they do it just in one area? Like maybe they say, I'm just going to do it in installs first. Is that even possible?
100%. We have a lot of people that do that. And
Okay.
internally, we call that land and expand. Like, look, give it a shot for this team. If you have multi-location, this location, service department only, give it a shot. And then you can see, how it's received, how your employees are, behaving differently. And yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Okay, man. Hey, thanks for being on the show. Super appreciate it. Love what you're doing and wish you the best of success.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Welcome to Profit and Grit. It's profit and grit, not luck and a wish. From the wrench to the spreadsheet, we're stacking our chips. Slow season hits, man, we tighten the ship. It's the blue collar way we build, not dip.